What's up, guys? Gujira54 here, also known as Richard Manzo, and today we're going to be talking about how Godzilla Minus One fixed all of Shin Godzilla's mistakes. Now, Godzilla Minus One just came out, and hands down, by far, I don't think this is an unpopular opinion, it is by far the best and most well-crafted Godzilla film ever made. Now, many people believe this to have been Shin Godzilla before this movie. Obviously, everybody knows my opinions on Shin Godzilla. Minus One is the pinnacle of Godzilla and kaiju cinema. There's been nothing like it before. This is by far the most well-made Godzilla film. Now, I'll go into more details, but as I was sitting in the theater with my jaw wide open, I realized something. This is basically Shin Godzilla if they actually tried. Now, here's the thing. Everybody knows my opinion on Shin Godzilla. I've actually grown to appreciate the movie a lot more, but that's not going to stop me from using it as a vehicle to praise how well made just this movie is alone. So this is going to be how Minus One fixed all of Shin Godzilla's mistakes. Now, the first and most obvious way is the characters. The human characters of Minus One are complex, flawed, yet sympathetic. They feel like people who have lived multiple lives, terrible ones from the tragedy of war at that. Our main character, Kyoki, was a kamikaze fighter pilot in the war who just couldn't go through with his mission and chose not to kill himself. Throughout the film, he is ridiculed for his actions. We see the shame is brought to him and his family, who are also deceased. His neighbor blames the attacks of Tokyo on his cowardice. This woman then goes on to become the surrogate aunt of the orphan child Kyoki takes in. It's these complexities throughout the film that make this movie so great. Everybody just feels like a real person. There's no character or caricature in this movie. It's just you see and feel the people of Japan. You feel the grit. You feel the destruction that has caused them. And you just completely sympathize with them. And that doesn't just go for the main character. Noriko, who were first introduced in the movie, she steals something from, some marketplace, and she's running away, and she has this orphan child in her possession, and we're just wondering, what's going on here? And she becomes a part of the main character's life. They have this family, they have this bond. They're not really together, they're not husband and wife, and everybody sort of questions that, and nobody's related to anybody, no child, whatever. But it's really beautiful, and they start to build this life together, and you really actually care and are invested, because something that this movie also does so well is that it depicts what Japan, and Tokyo specifically, was like post-World War II Japan, which is what no other Godzilla movie's ever done. The whole title of Minus One, when it was first announced, everybody, myself included, was like, what's this name? What does that mean, Minus One? And then, we get the deeper understanding, but still, I was like, okay, but it's still a weird title. But in this movie, you really get it. They really sell just the complete agony and destruction and just the nihilism that comes with war. Everybody is just living in an abandoned or in a little, destroyed shack, and there's just debris everywhere. People are dead. You don't see any of your family. Everybody is just literally at negatives now. Actually, no, they're at zero. They're zero, and then Godzilla arrives. He comes, and they're at Minus One. Every single scene with the family dynamic, though, is beautiful and real. We see the trauma and guilt that Kyoki goes throughout the film because he has a personal connection to Godzilla. The reason why he was on Odo Island in the first place is because he bailed out on his kamikaze suicide mission, and he already was feeling guilty about that. Then Godzilla arrives. It's Godzillasaurus, something I've always wanted to see, a small Godzilla. He's only about 50 feet tall, and he's just eating people full-on Jurassic Park style. The second he jumped out of that light like a Five Nights at Freddy's jump scare, I was like, oh my gosh, this is a different Godzilla movie. And during that scene, again, it's real tense. It's almost like a Spielberg Jurassic Park. He's told the main character to go to the gunner ship and to start shooting at Godzilla because that's the only, artillery they have that can actually maybe put him down. So he's ordered to do so. And just like with the kamikaze orders, he can't. He's a coward, what he feels like. He just can't do it. And that results in the other soldiers of the platoon starting to shoot at Godzilla. And now they're all getting bitten, ripped in half, stomped on, full on T-Rex and Dominus Rex style, flung around. Just great horror kind of stuff going on. But this results in him and the mechanic being the only survivor left of Odo Island. So again, this personal connection with Godzilla. And when Godzilla comes back later in the film, he feels like it's his fault because if he followed through with his orders, he could have stopped Godzilla. As for the other characters, though, I loved the scientist, I loved the captain, the kid, who they kept referring to as Green. They had a great camaraderie, the three of them together. It felt very, everybody's saying Spielberg, Jaws-esque, and it's true, They are on this boat, they're having fun, they're trying to make the best of life, and then Godzilla just comes and fucks everything up. Now, if we compare this with Shin Godzilla, come on. It's not even comparison, right? I mean, this is what I'm saying. This movie took everything that people said they loved about Shin Godzilla, or people who, like me, said they disliked about Shin Godzilla, and just made it 10 times better. The characters are just so much greater than any other Godzilla movie we've ever seen before, including this, because the largest piece of defense that I've seen for the bland characterization of Shin Godzilla is that Japan is the main character. It doesn't have to be a singular person. It doesn't have to be the prime minister. It doesn't have to be anybody else, Kayako Ann Patterson. It doesn't have to be any of them. It just has to be Japan as the main character. But this movie, -1, proves that you can have Japan as the central character of the movie, because that's what it is. The whole movie is all about Japan coming together, rising from the ashes, from nothing. The civilians. It's not even the government. It's the civilians taking control of their own life, because the civilians are the ones who fight Godzilla in the end. It's not the military. It's them. So this movie proves that not only can you have the central protagonists be Japan, but also have interesting and real characters that had depth to them. Now, one of the few complaints I've seen about this movie is that Noriko survives at the end. And here's the thing, is that the whole movie is kind of like a gut punch. It really is, you know? And throughout it, you're just like, man, these characters have really been through so much. And so I'm okay with the happy ending because it's deserved. It's not just, the classic cheesy ending, everything, feels good. In this movie, they put the characters through the ringers. And that little kid, too, I mean, not only did she lose her first set of parents, she almost lost her second set of parents. So I'm happy that this family, again, they find meaning, they find purpose, they find love. That's what it's all about. They come together. But that scene is also underlined with a dark tone because we see on her neck something that looks like, I don't know, it's a Godzilla spine or some sort of Godzilla scale, but it looks like an infection of sorts. It doesn't just look like a kilo scar or something like that. It looks like something specific to Godzilla, and even though it's a happy note, it kind of leaves you on a little bit of a somber, depressing, ominous tone. Kyoki's struggle throughout the movie was also fantastic. His whole, idea of what it is to be a hero and what it means, for giving his life, because obviously that's the thing he couldn't do. And the thing that makes Naroki's death early in the movie, which is huge, just gut punch, even though, she lives, is that she did the one thing he couldn't, and she gave her life. I think that's what the point of that scene is that, not only is she gone, is she dead in that moment, but it's that she did the selfless act, and gave her life. And so he just feels guilty after that. And that's when he comes at Godzilla with a vengeance. And the whole movie, you just think it's a whole suicide mission for him to just get vengeance on Godzilla. And you really hate Godzilla in this movie. That's what I love about it too, is that every Godzilla movie, I go into it and I'm like, okay, I just want to see Godzilla. I obviously want to see good characters too, but I want to see Godzilla just fucking the city up, destroying everything. I want to see him, shooting the atomic breath. But every single time Godzilla showed up in this movie, I was scared for all of the characters, and that's something I haven't felt in a Godzilla movie because I cared about all of them. I wanted everybody to get out safely. But whenever Godzilla came on the shore and started destroying Ginza, the second they said Ginza and Naroki has that job in Ginza, I was like, oh my gosh, no, please don't. Because I care about them, and even just the little houses. I'm like, Godzilla, please just go back to the ocean. I don't want to see you destroying anything, because I know if you step on that, that's going to be that little shack of twigs and stuff. That's somebody's house right now because they have nothing else. That was my thought process throughout the whole movie. And this is probably a good time to actually get on to Godzilla himself. Godzilla is fucking terrifying in this movie. This is by far the most scary Godzilla we've ever seen put to screen. This is a Godzilla who is a true force of nature. I know that gets thrown around a lot these days, and so maybe that's not even accurate. This is a ghost or a demon that's chasing our main character, our main protagonist throughout the movie. And he is the symbolism of just war and nuclear holocaust, as he should be. And let me tell you, the atomic breath scene, that has to be one of the most harrowing scenes I've ever seen in a movie. Just the sound design alone, the shot, the silence, the aftershock, it's just phenomenal. Everything is. Even in the beginning, when they're on the boat and they throw the mine into Godzilla's mouth and it literally kills him, and then you just see his whole head just regenerate back. It's like, this guy's unstoppable. Another thing about this Godzilla too, besides also him having a smaller form of Godzillasaurus, which is more personable to actually target humans like he did, which is, again, scary. This is also a Godzilla that really has human features, like his eyes. He really looks at you. He sees the people. He chases them. He's opening his mouth like Jaws at the back of the boat, trying to swallow the boat whole. And just in the third act, he's chasing the plane. He's actively pissed off throughout the movie. Something interesting about this too is that we got to see briefly his, transformation, his mutation from Godzillasaurus to Godzilla. And even though it was just a close-up of his eyeball, I felt it. I felt like the pain and just the charringness, the decay of it. And so, I get why he's pissed. Now, take something like this, though, Godzillasaurus, and now compare it to Kamada-kun. Come on. This is how you do a different interpretation of Godzilla, a different rendition of the original 54, while keeping its original dark, serious roots and actually making it scary. And again, in this movie, Godzilla does things different that he's never done before, but they don't go crazy. They don't go anime beam style. They don't throw 100, lasers and mouth out the tail. This Godzilla is still familiar, and yet he's very different in many ways. For instance, his spikes, they rise up out of his spines, and I actually really like that. It's a cool effect, and it's different. And his atomic breath, he has no control over it. Once he shoots it, it's gone, and it just creates a huge mushroom cloud. And it's terrifying. It's honestly I thought, the Shin Godzilla atomic breath scene is still one of my favorite Godzilla atomic breath scenes, but the one in -1, I think, just tops it for just being just so destructive and so scary. That's what it really feels like. So overall, -1 just keeps the original idea of Godzilla more intact. It's something that we are more familiar with, and it makes him, even though he's smaller, even though he has less abilities, even though he is seemingly more, susceptible to conventional weaponry, he is still scarier though, just because you feel like this guy actually has emotions. He's coming after you. I also really enjoyed the way they defeated Godzilla at the end, because it was creative. It was something that was still plausible for the time, but it was a really clever idea to kind of, feed Godzilla his own medicine in a way. The third act is literally the definition of just desperation running on fumes. I just love the part where the two ships are going to collide and they're like, what do we do? And the captain's like, there's nothing we can do, just brace for impact. And that's literally what they're doing. They're just destroying themselves just to try to destroy Godzilla because that's all they have left. And just the scenes of, even just the people talking, the way that the Japanese government treated them during World War II. And that is something that, is very unique to this, and just how it really goes over how Japan just really did not respect the lives of their soldiers and just people in general, not just Japan, war in general, how it just doesn't respect people's lives and families, and how this movie, how everyone, even though they're all going to fight Godzilla, even though they know they could possibly die, they're happy to do it because it's something they care about. It's not just a war, it's protecting their families from certain death. And so when Kyoki makes the final sacrifice, and thankfully he doesn't die, it's, beautiful because the message of the movie is to live. It's not to die. It's not to give your life away for nothing. It's to find purpose to live. And that's what it's about. And that's what Japan finds. Something else I also wanted to talk about briefly was the score of this movie. Now, obviously, it had the original tracks, and when the first atomic breath scene happens with the battleship, I love that. It was the same one that played in the trailer, but it's just so haunting and ominous. But the use of the original Godzilla theme when he attacks in Ginza is just... it's fantastic. Chills were just sent throughout my whole body. And, as you guys know, I criticized Shin Godzilla for reusing the same themes because it seemed old and it seemed lazy. And I have to say, it is not the same at all in this context. In Shin Godzilla, it feels like they just kind of plopped it in there. But in this one, it gives a whole new meaning to the theme. It makes it scary. That's when Godzilla's at his most destructive. When Noriko's on the train and she's hanging and dangling, which is, again, an amazing scene. We see the reporters on the building just getting wiped away as the building crumbles, and it makes you scared of Godzilla. It makes the theme, honestly, really terrifying. Another thing I want to mention, too, is the director, Takashi Yamazaki. He is amazing in this. Not only just the cinematography, but the camera work, the movement. I love how certain shots would start above the ocean and would go underwater, and they'd follow Godzilla, and we just see him in new perspectives we never have, and he really just portrays a true sense of scale that only really Godzilla 2014 has ever really captured. Another thing about this film is that it really puts the characters right in the action fighting Godzilla, something that Shin Godzilla never did. The characters most of the time were just observing him from far away atop a building or under a bunker. They were never actively fighting Godzilla. Even in the finale, when they were going up against him, they were always just far away. Here, we have people on planes, jets, just boats fighting Godzilla right next to him, shooting machine guns at him. It makes you fear for the characters' lives throughout the whole film, and it just makes it that much more riveting. Godzilla Minus One is just the ideal version of Shin Godzilla. It's superior in every single way, and it just takes the foundation of that movie and just creates so much more depth. But yeah, guys, I mean, that's basically, my synopsis of the movie. That's my review. Those are my thoughts. This isn't a straight comparison of the two movies, but it just shows you just how Shin Godzilla is sort of walked so that this movie could run. Because what everybody says about Shin Godzilla, this movie just does 100 times better. This is the pinnacle, as I said, of Godzilla and Kaiju cinema. But thank you guys so much for watching, though. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. Give it a big thumbs up during this video. Also, guys, tell me down below, what do you think? Have you seen it? When are you going to see it? And what did you think? But thank you guys so much for watching, though. Good cheer for as always, out.